Okay, you're already co-host.
Awesome. Let me change my name.
Okay, I'm gonna let people in. I'll just keep monitoring and letting people in, and then I'll hit record. Oh, we're already recording. Afternoon, everybody. Good to see all
Hi, hi.
your familiar names. No faces as of yet. You bold that want to show yourselves. You
Hey, how's
lit.
everybody doing?
Oh, hey, Chris.
I'm wrapping up lunch a little bit.
Doing great. Saw Scott for a second.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
You still got some people trickling in.
Scott, you don't have to be on camera. I was just joking.
I didn't want you to feel alone.
Thank you. We still have people really coming in, so let's give it maybe one more minute,
My screen going.
and I'll keep monitoring. Hey, Matt. Oh, no microphone, no prob. Well, I'll be monitoring the chat the whole time, so please feel free to use that. That goes for everybody. Uh, keep your questions and comments in the chat, and I'll be looking through them and cataloging questions when it gets time for Q&A. So use that chat as you want. I think that we've had some slowdown. So, Ian, if you want to kick it off, I think that we're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining our 2026 General Assembly session preview. It's kind of a cool time to do a preview because we have bills coming through. We have bill numbers. So if you did it earlier in December, but now we are finally seeing what the language is. So you can see I'm creating a very rudimentary system to figure out how we're going to prioritize here at Wetlands Watch, what we're going to be doing, what our plan is. And so I wanted to share a little bit of that with some background of what I have been seeing change that may help you in terms of getting information in the future if you've got questions about the General Assembly and what's happening in Richmond. So starting off, it's worth going back to November. Big shift in the General Assembly. There was a shift towards the Democrats across pretty much the entire state. And looking at if you're not familiar with the Virginia Public Access Project, they've got some great visuals. And so this one of House incumbents defeated between 1997 to 2025, I saw that 2025 tied with 2017 in terms of incumbents being defeated, which in political science can sometimes be rare since incumbents have an advantage. With that, understanding that there are 13 new Democrats, and then we've also been seeing some appointments of Democrats into the Spanberger administration. So then there are also special elections that have happened, results being announced today, as well as special elections coming up in later, like January 20th and in February. So I'll be keeping my eyes, seeing how that changes the composition of both the House and the Senate. Just do another foundation, General Assembly 101, in case this is your first time listening in. We've got a bicameral system here in Virginia. It's made up of two chambers, the House of Delegates, which is 100-member 2-year terms. back in 2025, there were 51 Democrats and 49 Republicans. In November, that switched to 64 Democrats and 36 Republicans, and we're seeing some more elections come through. On the Senate side, we've got 40 members with 4-year terms in 2025 and in 2026. Right now, there are 21 Democrats and 19 Republicans, though Senator Hashmi is currently still in the General Assembly, but will be the lieutenant governor. So there may be some changes there as that special election is announced. Session timing, as we are in 2026, that is not an odd year, but it's an even year. And so that means our session is a longer session, longer being 60 days. And we started on Wednesday. So we are already sprinting forward in these 60 days. Unfamiliar what the legislature does, it's drafting, making laws, amending the state budget, and confirming appointments. We're a part-time legislature, so goes back to colonial times. There are pros and cons of that. The pro mostly being articulated that part-time reduces cost to taxpayers compared to a full-time body, because if you go longer, then you have to pay your legislators. That is the 101, but that is just a part of what we're looking at. We're also looking at, since we've got these 13 new members, and there have been people who have been appointed into the Spanberg administration, we're seeing changes in the committees. And so I just saw that there are new faces in the House ACNR that was released on the 15th. So David Bulova was one of the chairs, not the chair of the main, but a chair of the subcommittees in ACNR. And ACNR stands for Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources. With them, finding my words, some people have moved up, some people were defeated in the election, some people have just been removed and put in others retired. So we've got 5 new faces coming into the Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources Committee. I'm still waiting to see who the chairs of the subcommittees are. The General Assembly website hasn't updated, so stay tuned to figure out who's going to be taking some of these people's positions now that they have left or no longer in the General Assembly. The other thing to look for in terms of committee composition is, of course, since the House had their most recent election looking at the Appropriations Committee, and there are new faces in the Appropriations Committee. Some people were defeated in the 2025 election, others retired, a couple appointments. Most notably, Delegate Bulova is now the secretary-elect of Historic and Natural Resources. So you'll be seeing him on the executive side a little bit more. And those people were replaced by Delegate Herring, Wildfur, Price, Simons, Thomas, and Tran. So we're seeing some familiar faces move up into that important Appropriations Committee role. So it will be interesting to see how the budget will go down, since the budget was decided or introduced by Governor Youngkin in December. As of today at 5 p.m., budget amendments are due, and then we'll see what budget we're working with in the future. And we'll be talking about some budget items later on. But yeah, lots of change in the General Assembly. So new ways of looking for information and seeking out information. Where we are is we're really, really early. We're right here where bills are being pre-filed and introduced. Some of them have already been assigned to a committee. Some are still waiting for a referral to the committee. So you'll probably see this presentation at crossover with some updated slides, but right now everything is pretty new, and we've got a long 58 days ahead. Just looking at statistics of what's happening, there are 1,724 total items, and so I'm including bills, resolutions, joint resolutions, commendations in these. I wanted to compare that to 2025, and I looked and I saw, because I just checked right before, there's 3,107, so there's a 45% reduction. Now, there we can still expect more bills, potentially up to 200 more, because each delegate or each legislator can have up to 10 after Wednesday happened. And so potentially we may be seeing more Looking just at bills, though, and not looking at resolutions, there are 1626 bills, and then I just use the ACNR both in the House and the Senate as a proxy. So there are 29 bills right now in ACNR at the House side and 15 in the Senate, and that is just 2% of all the bills that have been proposed. So a lot of things, the bills keep coming in. I saw that there are like maybe 15 bills that came in the last 10 minutes. So will give you what I know, which is of Wednesday. And I apologize if you know something that I have not seen that came through yesterday or today. Looking at Wetlands Watch, I'm trying to create a tracker that will be updated, and I'm like labeling bills with the policy area that they apply to. Right now, we're looking at 28 bills, but 34 items. Wait, let me pick that. There we go. And most of them are within the resiliency. There are a couple building codes, waste reduction, wetlands, CFP specific EJ, emergency management, floodplain management, invasive species management, land use and conservation, among the other things that we are following. And I want to talk about a little of them that some are I'm highlighting is like, this is really cool. Some of them I'm monitoring to see how it's going to go forward. So starting off pretty low, we're going to, in terms of the sequential order. So HB 52 is from Delegate Bloxham. It has its in committee for ACNR, and it is creating state policy around the beneficial use of dredged material, something that we've been talking about for a while. Other states do utilize and have state policy saying that they need to use dredge material. Dredge material, of course, being the material that you dredge up if you're deepening waterways and navigation channels. We care about this because that dredge material could be beneficially used to help with thin layer placement, and that might be an option to help wetlands persist in place longer in the face of sea level rise. So instead of letting them go, we spray a slurry, a mixture of water and this beneficially used dredge material on top of wetlands so that they are able to accrete faster than sea level is currently rising. But in order to actually test these pilots out, we would need policy in place so that we can see what mechanisms could be best used, since thin layer placement is essentially spraying something within hydraulics. They can go anywhere they want. It's useful for us to figure out how it's going to work in Virginia. Coming up next, we've got HB 237. That the chief patron is Delegate Lopez. It also is in committee, and it's adding a map layer to Conserve Virginia to highlight wetland migration zones under sea level rise conditions. Conserve Virginia is the program in which we use to figure out how we want to prioritize conservation land purchasing. And we recognize at Wetlands Watch that we need to conserve lands behind current wetlands so they can migrate landward and not drown under sea level. And so having a map layer in Conserve Virginia would help us prioritize bang for buck if we're looking at future migration corridors. And that would then also be a prioritization weight that would go forward into thinking about conservation lands in the future. If there are flood benefits and wetland benefits, then that's double. We have, double dipping co-benefits that would help everyone out, including our wetlands. HB 521 is pending a referral to a committee at the moment, but that's from Delegate Hernandez, and it's making no net loss of wetlands official VMRC policy. As I understand it, our no net loss is through a different chapter in code as well as our participation in the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. And so we didn't actually have no net loss in terms of acreage and function of wetlands actually in the VMRC section of the Code of Virginia. And so we all thought it was in the Virginia Wetlands Act, and we've been acting on it since 2000 as if it was. But this will be the first time now that we actually have the code. if you go and search HB 521 and then look at the text, it's just like a couple, like 4 words of adding that no net loss of wetland acreage and function. So it's probably one of those smaller edits of the code that we're looking through in the bills that we've been looking at. So our next step, get no net loss to actually acknowledge those climate losses, and we've got to have the policy in order to move forward with the policy in VMRC. And if I did not make it clear, starred bill titles are ones that we are paying close attention to, and the unstarred ones are ones that we are monitoring. So moving on forward, right now they're not listed as companion bills, but they do look pretty similar, House and Senate companions. So on the House side, House Bill 487, Delegate Hernandez, and on the Senate side, Senate Bill 192, Senator Williams Graves. And this is talking about property interests with bottomland. So in Virginia, anything past mean low water, technically the bottomlands, it's technically underwater, is owned by the Commonwealth. And if you want to do something, you need to ask for permission. This bill, the hurdle with this bill is that if you wanted to do a coastal storm risk management system project with the Army Corps of Engineers, you need to have a property interest in that bottomlands in order to, go and disturb either through living shorelines, flood walls, insert both natural and gray flood infrastructure. You still need to have that property interest. And so this bill is resolving that issue of the Army Corps of Engineers not allowing or not being able to pass on to a non-federal sponsor, generally a locality, disturbing those bottomlands. We're still in the information gathering stage. I know in other states, the VMRC equivalent state agency would create like a right-of-way easement to that locality, and that would be the process. Right now, it seems like if you sign into a PPA, a project partnership agreement with the Corps, just signing that agreement would then give you the interest of the bottomland. And so I'm just kind of curious whether or not the other states that have that sort of state agency giving the approval, is that a way forward? If you've got information on that, please let me know. I am reading about how other states have done that sort of problem with CSMR projects in Texas, and Louisiana, and Florida. HB 214, this is with Delegate Fagans. It is in committee. It is enabling a locality to establish a home flood protection assistance program through an ordinance, and it actually puts a number at $3,000 for non-structural flood proofing. It's enabling non-structural flood protection for vulnerable populations and reduces repetitive flood losses. However, I think potentially this is already something that localities can do. I'm familiar with Northern Virginia, and they have some programs up there. Potentially, this may not be needed. And so I am still in the information seeking phase of this to see if we actually need that, or if it can be incorporated and changed into some other flood protection bills. Since we already seem to have it in other parts, I've not done enough research on Northern Virginia, though, but I do know that they've got some both with localities as well as their soil and water conservation district, which is great to know that we could potentially use that as a model for Hampton Roads. HJ 16, House Joint Resolution 16. The delegate is Converse Fowler. It is in committee. It's continuing the joint subcommittee on recurrent flooding. When it was passed in 2025, it used an older version of the resolution. And so this is just updating that resolution to not simply be on coastal Virginia, but all of Virginia. It's also going to potentially expand and not just look at recurrent flooding. I'm waiting for language, but potentially also sea level rise and that sort of expected future climate change flooding on climate change flooding, yeah. And we would want this to still be, on terms of Wetlands Watch, we want this to still be at Richmond, have them think about it, recognizing that flooding issues are generally between a locality and, land use authority is with localities. What do we do at the state level, thinking through funding prioritization, how we want to approach what information that we need, making sure that delegates, senators are still thinking about this. I apologize if you're adding comments. I will check in those at the end, but we'll have plenty of time to talk. HB 389, this is from Delegate Askew. It is in committee. It's creating a climate adaptation plan for fisheries in the Chesapeake Bay. The language is actually pretty robust. It's not only looking at temperature, dissolved oxygen, acidification. It's also figuring out like how do we keep fish habitat? What do we need? Lots of items in this report, and this report I think is going to be done every 3 years. So something that we're following pretty closely, even though we don't have a direct fishing connection. Wetlands and fish do go hand in hand because wetlands help create future fish. HB 641, Delegate Krizik. It's the Virginia's Great Outdoors Act. We ran this, or when I say it was ran last year. A very long line of supporters when it was heard in the Appropriations Committee, but it was gently laid on the table due to financial issues or like not having enough money in the budget to do so. This one, it came back and it also put a new tax on data center land. So it's something that we're tracking to see how that's going to be received. But why we care is open space preservation, is flood risk reduction, and then you can multiply the co-benefits of preserving land around floodplain areas and get points for the community rating system and potentially lower flood insurance premiums for policyholders. So maximize across every federal program, starting at the locality side. With HB 256, this was also killed in 2025. It's coming back. Delegate, it was like Senator Bagby, and this time in the House side, it's Delegate Simons. We're waiting for referral. It's looking and adding environmental justice within comprehensive plans in the future. And since more often than not, the comprehensive plan is about land use planning and not about the people in the community, developing strategies to put those people first in planning will help create a more resilient community. I think HB 256 is the environmental justice component, and it has the shall language, and then HB 257 is also Delegate Simons, and that is social determinants of health, and that is a may language. So following both of those closely. Senate Bill 197, this one actually came out of the joint subcommittee of recurrent flooding. It's from Senator Williams Graves, and it is sort of matching the CFPF in terms of interest and repayment obligations with federal funding that had been available in the past. Generally, you don't have interest accrue until either shovels are in the ground or the project is complete. If the way that's been set up and explained to me is when you start accruing interest, even though that you've got construction delays, permit delays, nothing has happened, but the interest is still accruing. This sort of defers that interest so that it's only when the project or study is completed. HJ 20, this is Delegate Glass. It's in committee, did not come out of the joint subcommittee. It's directing JLARC to study how localities share costs for managed retreat studies and whether a dedicated fund should support legacy property owners facing sea level rise. Worth studying, and this would help create fair, predictable funding for managed retreat. And it also focuses on vulnerable populations, specifically legacy property owners. Budget tracking. There are a lot of missing budget items that I'm aware may be added today, but haven't been put in yet, or I haven't seen it yet. So keeping my eyes out But what we do know is that for House Item 96I, that's the Virginia Natural Resources Leadership Institute, they're asking for $200,000. And then in House Item 361D, the Office of Resilience is asking for 3 FTEs over 2 years worth $1 million. And I don't believe those are new. I believe those are existing FTEs. But we are missing the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program funding, which is disappointing to see from when the budget was announced in December, and also no Virginia Sea Grant funding or RAFT funding. So we are looking to see if those will be added today and into next week. I'm moving pretty quickly. Next steps is that we're going to hear some committees, and after those committees crossover, I think I've got the dates. Next budget amendment is today at 5 p.m. Crossover is February 18th. Budget Sunday, February 22nd. The chamber budget deadline, so the House and the Senate, their appropriations committees figuring out their budget, is February 26th. And then conferee appointments are March 4th. Expected adjournments, March 14th. The governor amendment veto deadline is April 13th. Expected reconvene sessions, April 22nd. The deadline for the governor to sign and veto is May 25th, and everything, unless otherwise noted, will be going into effect July 1st. So we've got lots of things to be looking for. And let me know if you've got, I'll look in the questions now. I flew through that so quickly.
No, that's great. And I've been monitoring the chat, and we do have some questions. And then I've also I'm going to just be putting some things in the chat in terms of links that may be helpful. We will be having a crossover lunch and learn on, I believe it's the 20th. Okay, great. And so I went ahead and I put the link in there. And then if you haven't seen the chat, Casey added a VCAP funding kind of like one-pager doc that's helpful to track the value of VCAP. Thank you, Casey, for including that. And so I'll just start on some of the questions, and I've been trying to do a little bit of due diligence on them as Ian, you've been presenting. The first one is about the beneficial use of dredge materials bill. And it is specifically about if this bill is looking at the tiger beetle habitat, which is disturbed during the dredging process. The bill itself does not reference anything related to tiger beetle habitat. It's really much more about disrupting kind of fisheries and creating the opportunity for resilience through the use of dredge materials. So when the policy is developed, there will be opportunity for things like the issues of habitat protection to be considered. And so I would just advise that that you participate in that process and make your concerns heard, that dredging can have a negative impact on habitat, which of course we all know very well that is the case. So Matt, I hope that answers your question well enough. But I think it's ultimately no, it doesn't talk about it.
It does. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Of
course. Next question is Wendy. Hey, Wendy. Question is, does the HB 237, which is that's the Lopez bill that includes the wetlands migration zones, which is really just land behind wetlands, to be included in Conserve Virginia. And the question is, does the bill talk about how often that layer will need to be updated with current or live data? And again, the answer is no, the bill does not. As you can see here on Ian's screen, it's very simple. It just directs that the information, the lands that are adjacent to wetlands, be included in an existing layer. So the floodplains and flooding resilience layer exists already in Conserve Virginia, and this would be a subcategory that you could toggle on or off in that interactive map to see where lands adjacent to existing wetlands exist. So when you look at this language, it refers to the code section that's highlighted in blue text. That goes directly to the enabling language that establishes Conserve Virginia and directs the Department of Conservation and Recreation to make it and maintain it. And at the very top, Ian, in Part A, there's a section that says something like the department must regularly update. Okay, so first sentence, the department shall develop a program for creation, maintenance, operation, and regular updating of a data-driven. So that's all we've got to go on. I know that Conserve Virginia is a helpful tool. It is difficult to maintain because this data is constantly evolving. And that's been something that has been discussed in land conservation circles. And so I guess the hope would just be that there's funding available. And the good news is when it comes to the wetlands migration work is that there are a lot of layers that are already kind of available and a lot of work that's been done by BCR in coordination with VIMS on this particular issue. So the hope is that the layer won't be difficult to create, and then the maintenance of it is kind of TBD.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then I know that Matt and the Norfolk team has questions about the JLARC retreat bill, and then Ian, just for your knowledge, Matt and the team, the room of the resilience folks, said that in relation to the bill about the CSRM projects and the bottomlands property rights, and I don't know, that's not the right word, but the property interest, they've said that they've tried everything, including the suggestions that you've provided, and nothing's worked. So that's just feedback.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
hey, MC, this is Kyle. Matt and I are in the room together. The other room
Awesome.
didn't have audio, so we switched. Yeah, I mean, we can kind of elaborate on that a little bit if that helps, in case you guys get questions on this during the session. But
Yeah.
basically for structural features that are within the bottomlands, you have to have a perpetual easement. And then all the mitigation sites, you actually have to have the bottomlands in fee, like own them outright. And so that we've met with the Attorney General's office on this recently. Greg Steele actually helped us get some movement on this because we've been on this for a couple of years now. But it's a very high bar the Army Corps is setting on these projects for these types of features, much higher than this is, historically, or the state is, VMRC is like actually prohibited from giving up state-owned bottoms. So there's really only a legislative fix that would meet the standard of state that the Army Corps requires. That's the terminology they use for getting the fee simple interest on the property. So we've had those meetings with the Corps as well, and all together. And there doesn't seem to be a path forward without a legislative fix.
Yeah, in our last call with the Attorney General's office, they told us that even this language that you see right here highlighted, that even this language, if it was to be approved, would still not be sufficient, and that they wanted to expand this further. We talked to our folks about the processing committee to even adjust this further to accomplish what the Army Corps is asking us for, but they want us to essentially go further than the word easement and express the minimum fee, up to fee simple, the minimum necessary real estate interest necessary to satisfy the Army Corps real estate requirements for the feature and the activity. And so and that's for the sites that Kyle was describing, where we're doing either a nature-based solution or required mitigation, that they're saying that those activities specifically require fee simple as the minimum real estate. So, we do not love this, but we just don't know what else to do. And we've gone back and forth for the past 2 sessions and didn't submit anything. And we're at the point now where they're saying that like we can't move forward unless this is fixed. So
Yeah, we thought there was like a administrative process we could work out with the General Services Department of General Services and DMRC and the Attorney General's office, but can't Core just wouldn't agree to those options, and so we're this is basically all we're left with, and it could potentially hold up even some of our first construction pieces.
But one of the things we were trying to understand from other communities throughout the Commonwealth is if we're being told this interpretation from the Army Corps, and they've shared all the language with us that explains their minimum real estate requirements. If there's any other Army Corps civil works or ecosystem restoration projects that any localities are planning for, and if they're hearing the same thing, if they're hearing that they can't move forward with their wetland project without this real estate fix, then that's something that we want to know. We want to, because right now it just seems like we're the only one who's being told this interpretation, but we're also stuck. And so it just seems like this would surely help other communities with their projects if this is going to be the new minimum real estate interest that's required. So that's also kind of like our point of jumping on this call, is to see if anyone else is getting told the same thing for their project that they have planned.
I know I can reach out.
Yeah, anybody? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
My people in Texas to figure out what they're doing. But other people, please, yeah.
Yeah, and this rule is relatively new. This real estate requirement is basically since 2022. So, and we think that this rule has something to do with the fact that it's like a life safety project, and not a ecosystem restoration kind of thing. And but if there's other examples, where folks have encountered this in recent years, that would be interesting to know.
And I wonder, the use of the language here, legal property interest, was it too late to do an edit for minimum real estate requirements as determined by, like, I'm just
We are making
troubleshooting.
Yeah, we are going to
You
make
are.
a revision amendment to
Good.
these. With actually the Attorney General's office offered to help
That's helpful.
write it out the way it needs to be for them to facilitate this in the future, however it works administratively once that happens. But
I wonder if having the check on the sort of as projects are approved or something, so that or similar programs specifically authorized by the U.S. Congress, that clause seems open. And I hear what Matt, I think you said about the other localities maybe facing similar holdups, which of course, people don't want to experience. But I wonder if there could be some language that is more tailored to the specific, just the specific project, so that the state isn't giving kind of this carte blanche approval of these types of ownership, this type of ownership for everybody. But it's obvious that the CSRM projects, it's a different situation. So that I think it was one thing we were.
Yeah, I mean, we're flexible on some of that specific wording, but the part of, I think, the idea here was to capture things like eco restoration projects or beach nourishment projects or other things that are authorized through WRDA or could come
Right.
out of like a, if BRIC was around, some other federal agency kind of authorization. But I think here it was sort of like in our minds, we're thinking about anything that WRDA authorizes, which, we also have a beach nourishment authorization and several other
Mhm.
localities do around here. So that's, we were kind of make sure we were covered for if they kind of put this on us for those projects as well, like, breakwaters and beach nourishment out here in Norfolk on our beaches.
Yeah.
Because previously they didn't, but since 2022, there's seems to be a shift here. So
Mhm. Any other thoughts on this bill from the crowd?
Mary Carson, this is
Hey, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Andrews. How you doing? Um,
Great.
Kyle and Matt, just to mention to you that I'm just finishing up a mean low water line paper for the Coastal Zone Management Program, and that was actually raised by the Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission because they were trying to get FEMA brick dollars to do some shoreline restoration projects and ran into FEMA saying, well, you've got to get some kind of perpetual easement over these properties because you're an MLW state. So anything past the mean low watermark upland is privately owned. And so, going to intrude in that intertidal zone. Anyways, I can send you a copy of that when it's done in probably in about a week. It just goes into some of the points you're talking about. And I did talk to folks at the Corps, and I think there's frustration on their end too with this change. It's stacked up files on their desk and slowed everything down. So I think there's
yeah,
a lot of discussion about what can we do about this requirement holding everything up.
yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. That'd be great.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Looking still at the in the chat. Oh, do people want to talk about the JLARC managed retreat bill? That one's newer to us. We haven't really had a time to talk to Delegate Glass about that specifically.
Yeah, I think we were just curious if folks knew more about it or where it came from. Like, when I read this over, it's curious that Jackie Glass, who represents Norfolk, is is pushing it because it has a qualifier at the top of localities less than 35,000, which Norfolk is not. And so it felt like it was maybe something for Coast or Middle Peninsula, that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
uh, anyway, yeah, we were just kind of curious if anybody knew more about where this came from.
Mm-mm. Don't know.
I can
Can
find
you get
out.
back? Yeah. Can you go back to that section, Ian? So it is only applying to these communities that meet this standard?
Yeah, that's how we read it, or I read it, I
Yeah.
guess. So
Interesting. So I think the assumption there is that this study is not intended to freak out the big localities that would be worried about their tax base, but only provide insight for the smaller localities that would be able to stomach managed retreat better politically, maybe economically,
maybe,
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, Anybody on from a locality that meets that standard? Let me see. I think I saw someone from Smithfield was on. We're going to call people out. Socratic method in this lunch and learn. Let me see. No, I'm not sure. Anybody from a small community want to weigh in? this may be the first time that people are, yeah, Tammy is on from Smithfield. Maybe the first time people have had a chance to look at this. So we won't quite do that to somebody, but first time. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, Tammy, the idea is that this is directing JLARC to create a study for this issue of managed retreat, but only for those communities that are small. Yeah, really interesting carve out. Well, we're going to be speaking with the delegates, so we can provide some feedback for folks, and certainly do that in the crossover lunch and learn.
Can I speak up, or should I send it through a text message?
Nope.
This is
No,
Bob from
please.
This is Bob Bilicki from Watcher Creek, and we are a small community, so it may apply to us. And I can follow this with our delegate Rob Bloxham.
That'd be great. Yeah, we can talk to Delegate Bloxham about it as well.
Good.
The communities that he represents, almost all of them will be
Yeah.
affected, except for the Virginia Beach portion. Yep. Wonderful. That concludes the questions. If anybody wants to come off on mute, we're a casual bunch, so feel free to ask a question or make a comment. I don't see anything. Ian, if you want to close us out.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to keep building out. More bills have just dropped, and so I will review those and continue to track, continue to see what changes. If anything does change in between now and February 20th, when the crossover review is scheduled, I will put out a Commonwealth resilience brief, letting everyone know. So please subscribe to our newsletter so that you get those notifications. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel so that if you want to rewatch this, you can the minute I upload it. We're trying to build our YouTube channel up. I will put the channel in here in a second. But thank you for your time.
One additional thing, just in case folks on the call haven't seen yet, the Department of Conservation and Recreation's floodplain program released the Community Flood Preparedness Round 6 grants just today or last night or whatever. And so all of the grants are live, and I will add the link to the announcement site in the chat. Just a heads up, if you click on the links to the awards, they're spreadsheets. Right now, the spreadsheets are not necessarily matching what the text that you're clicking on says. And so, for example, you may pull up an Excel spreadsheet for the grants category, and it could actually be a spreadsheet of the loans that were approved. Or if you're trying to find the studies spreadsheet, you may accidentally pull up the grants spreadsheet. So I can't remember which actually goes to what, but please just know that that is a thing that's happening and creating confusion. So just dig around the best you can to find out what you're looking for. Okay, and I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Yay, City of Hampton. Yay.
Also, congratulations to West Piedmont PDC, Montgomery County, and Pennington Gap. We helped work and think through applications, these localities.
We're working on getting that geographic distribution across the state, so let's keep it up. Y'all get 10 minutes back of your day. So see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
thanks, all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.